When I woke up the next morning, it was a Saturday morning, and literally the very first thought that went through my head was, thank God that's over.
Welcome to Self-Made and Sober. I'm your host, Andrew Lassise with selfmade-coaching.com. And in this podcast, it's my job to interview people who are not only crushing it in business, but have also struggled with addiction in the past and are in long-term recovery. Be sure to join our Facebook group where we help entrepreneurs grow and scale their business at facebook.com/groups/SMC Mastermind, like Self-Made Coaching Mastermind. I hope you enjoy the show, and be sure to subscribe and rate the show afterwards so you can get notified each Friday when we put out a new episode. Welcome to the Self-Made and Sober podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lassise, and with me today is Angela Pugh. And I'm going to take a page out of your book, Angela, and I'd like for you to tell the audience about who you are and where they would recognize you from and what are the things that you're up to.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm really excited to do this. So I am the host of Addiction Unlimited podcast, where we talk about all things addiction and recovery, all methods, all paths, all that good stuff. I also founded a website called My Recovery Toolbox, which is exactly as it sounds. It's just a ton of tools and resources, online courses, all different things to help people get sober, stay sober, and live sober and happy, because that's kind of an important piece too.
I feel like being happy is one of those things that most people shoot for in their life. And so you've been sober since January 7, 2006. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And January 6th, 2006, would you say you were a happy person?
Definitely not a happy person. I was actually miserable my last night of drinking. Like, I didn't even want to drink that night. I was just in a situation. Some friends of mine, we had bought concert tickets like months before, and the concert rolled around and they were like, Angela, come on, you have to come out of your house. A little bit of backstory on that. I had my final thing that got me sober is I had a car accident that was pretty bad. And my accident happened on January 5th. I think it's kind of the 4th, but it was in the middle of the night. So it was technically the 5th. But so I had laid in my apartment and detoxed for 2.5 days. And then this Friday night rolled around. We had these concert tickets. My friends were like, Angela, you have to get out of the house. This is ridiculous. You can't stay in there forever. But I was going through detox, so I wasn't in the best mood. But I thought, they're right. I should go. It'll be fun. I thought that everyone would understand I wasn't drinking because I had just crashed my car drunk. And that's a whole other insane story. But I was an hour away from home at this concert with all these people. I didn't drive, and they were getting drinks. And I had the strength one time to say, no, I'm not drinking. And my friend looked at me and he was like, Angela, I know you, dude. If I get you a drink, you're going to drink it. So you may as well get what you want. And in that split second, I had all these things flash through my mind, like, well, what am I going to do? Am I not going to drink all night and everybody is going to be weird and uncomfortable around me? I'm going to be miserable. Like, I don't have $100 for a cab ride home because I was an hour away. I definitely did not have any friends that would be willing to go that far, like to pick me up. I had already burned through all those bridges, having friends pick me up in the middle of the night from the hospital or the police station. So I just decided in that split second, like, I'm going to go ahead and drink. Like, I knew it was my last night drinking. I didn't want to drink that night. I just felt like it was the only way to get through the evening. And it was miserable.
And so you kind of had like a second of like, no, this is it. And then it was like, okay, never mind. But what changed the next day?
Well, again, I didn't even want to drink that night. Like, had I been at home, I would have never drank that night. It was kind of survival. I knew I was stuck. I was completely trapped in the situation. At least I thought so then. Like, as resourceful as I am now, I probably would have walked home instead of drink. but but at that time, I was only 48 hours in. I didn't have that kind of resolve. But it really was survival. It was just to get through that night without it being so uncomfortable of me sitting around while everybody else was drinking and everybody looking at me crazy and being at a concert, which I really didn't even care about to begin with. Like there was just all these things. I did not want to drink that night. I just thought it was the only way to get through it.
Drinking without your own permission is one of those things that I hear every now and then in a 12-step recovery, people saying, like, I realized there was a problem when I would drink without my own permission.
Yeah.
And so what were some of the strategies that you were using at that time, and do you still use them now?
So my recovery really became my full-time job. And I have people all the time, I've been an interventionist for about 11 years, and I put people in treatment literally like all over the world. And I think that leads people to believe that I also went to treatment, which I didn't. And everybody says, well, how'd you do it without going to treatment? And it's just that my recovery became my full-time job. It is all I cared about every day was making sure I didn't have a drink. I didn't have an overwhelming desire to have a drink. When I quit, I was really finished. Even talking about that last night of drinking, when I woke up the next morning, it was a Saturday morning. And literally, the very first thought that went through my head was, thank God that's over. Because then I knew I would never put myself in an awkward position again. I would never, ever do that to myself again. And I knew I wouldn't drink because I was really done. I mean, I had a huge motivator. My car accident was a huge motivator, but my recovery just became my full-time job. So the only thing I knew to do was to go to 12-step meetings, and that's all I knew. I just knew that was a place that people went when they didn't want to drink anymore. So I thought, okay, I'll go there to not drink anymore because that's all I wanted. And I went and I fell in love with it. And I went every single day. In 12 step, they say 90 meetings in 90 days. And I don't think I missed a meeting for 5 years. And
Wow.
a lot of days I went to multiple meetings. Saturdays, my home group Saturday night is our speaker meeting. So a lot of times I'd go to a meeting early Saturday morning and then I would be back that night for the speaker meeting. But all my friends were there. It gave me this whole new life to enjoy and people to connect with, that were like-minded. Our paths were going the same direction, and I really needed that.
So you feel that the fellowship really helped move you in the right direction, being with like-minded people. I know that I've found for myself, just the people that I associate with. I was originally in Maryland and then went to rehab. So the story's a little different, but I landed in Florida, and none of my friends drank, or well, they all used to drink a whole lot, and now currently none of them did. So it's a lot easier when you surround yourself with people who are all trying to do the same thing, because they have those cliche sayings like, if you stay around the barber shop, you'll eventually get a haircut.
Right.
And it's kind of the same thing. It's like reverse peer pressure. Like, all of my friends are peer pressuring me not to
To
drink
stay
and do
sober, right?
drugs. So it's like, oh, I don't want to be a loser and drink. But when you're in that old world, it's difficult to make the transition from all of my friends rage like I do to all of my friends used to rage like I used to, but are trying not to do that anymore. And in entrepreneurship, do you see any parallels between that with the kind of people that you hang around?
I feel like in a lot of ways, entrepreneurship for me is far more isolating because I don't have a group that I can go to and have like-minded people. And entrepreneurship is really challenging, and it's lonely a lot. I mean, the majority of my work is through my computer. So all the back end behind the scenes stuff, like you can be consumed in all of that stuff for days on end, really. And it is really lonely. I think oftentimes I feel like we have a tendency to kind of blow it out of proportion with sobriety, where we think we have to like cut off all of our friends and break up with everybody. And I didn't view it that way at all. To me, it was no different than when a lot of my friends in my late 20s, like a lot of my friends were getting married and having kids. Their lives just naturally took a different turn, right? So a lot of my girlfriends want to hang out with other moms and wives because they have more things in common and more things to talk about. Where I sit there, I'm a dog mom, I'm forever single. And they start talking about kids and snot and projectile vomit, and I'm just sitting there going, wow, I'm planning my next trip to Europe, like, so it's not that you're like breaking up with your friends and it's this big dramatic thing. It's that we have all these pivot points in life where our directions just go different directions, period. Your interests become different and you're naturally going to gravitate toward other people and away from some people. I just think that's the progression of life. And entrepreneurship was very much the same way, in that as my dreams and my goals got bigger and I got more focused on that achievement, I definitely had to go a different direction away from some of my other friends, right? Who had a lot of limiting beliefs and didn't see the potential and were negative. And I can't have a lot of that negative energy in my life. So there are definitely some parallels.
I believe too, when we're kids and we grow up and our best friend in the whole wide world just happens to live in like a 3 mile radius from the same house that we grow up in. And it's just the people around us, we all are into the same things. And then as you get older and kids move and you start getting interests in different things and meeting new people, I remember I kind of came to this conclusion my first semester in college. The guy who lived in the dorm next to me, this guy Matt, best friends, friends forever, and I had just met him that semester, and I was waitlisted at the school I wanted to go to was College Park, Maryland, and I was waitlisted until second semester. And so I went to my fallback school, Salisbury, met Matt, and I was like, Matt's my best friend forever. I'm never going to leave Salisbury. He was also waitlisted at College Park. He actually ended up going there, and I wasn't in the loop. But like he and I don't talk anymore. And that was, 15 years ago or whatever. But at that time, it was like, oh my God, where will I ever meet another friend like him? But just like you said, we start growing and we gravitate towards different things and different people. And I was very much into like the music scene at that time. And that was like a huge part of my life. And just naturally, as we grow and just tastes change, people change, interests change. It's like that saying, change is the only constant. But you were
It's so
talking
true.
about how you focused in and really started targeting the exact things that you want. Was there any strategy or deliberation behind figuring out what it actually is that you want? So many people, they're not happy where they currently are, but they can't answer the next question of where do you want to go. So how do you do that?
It took a lot of practice. I talk about practice a lot. Everything we do really takes practice. My drinking took a lot of practice. The way I drank when I quit looked very different from the way I drank when I started. It took all those years of
Amen.
practice to turn into the hot mess that I was. And sobriety and recovery take a lot of practice. I'm a very different person today than I was 13 years ago when I got sober. It takes a lot of practice. And I think that life journey is exactly the same way. There is nothing that I am doing currently in my life that I even would have thought I'd be doing 5 years ago. And the key, I believe, is always staying in action. And I think it's the same thing in recovery. It's always staying in action. I don't necessarily know. I know my really big picture now, what I want my life to look like, big picture. I understand that now. It took a lot of trials and tribulations and uh, things I never would have imagined happening. There were just a lot of plot twists along the way. And the key is just to not stop. That's the only thing that has saved me, is that I just don't stop, even when it feels uncertain, even when I get caught up in financial insecurity or fear of the future. I just don't stop. Those are the moments that I'll take a couple of minutes, have a conversation with the universe, and say, please give me the ability to stay open minded and tell me what you need from me, because I'm willing to do whatever that is. And oftentimes, an opportunity will come out of left field that's not something I ever would have imagined. It doesn't look how I thought I was looking for. It's just completely unexpected. And I have to be open to those things. But it's been a long journey figuring out really what I want my big picture to look like. And even when, I didn't go to college till I was 37. I was a lifetime bartender and loved it. And at 37, I thought, well, I don't really want to be 50 in bartending. You do make great money as a bartender. You can do all the things you want to do and have benefits and vacations and whatever you want. You can adult and be a bartender. But I knew at that time I was 4 years sober, and I knew I wanted more out of my life. I knew I wanted something that was passion driven. And I knew I wanted my life to revolve around recovery. That's all I knew at that time. I wanted my life to continue to revolve around recovery, and I wanted my work to revolve around recovery. So I decided to go to school literally on a whim. I woke up one morning, had that thought, and went online and filled out a college application, which I had never done before. I had never even considered going to college before. And even through my course of college, I thought I was doing a 2-year addiction counseling program, and I did that. And then my state kind of took that away, and that 2-year program no longer got you licensed. Now it had to be a 4-year degree. So I thought I was going for a 2-year degree, which turned into social work, which turned into psychology, which turned into neuropsychology. And I don't do any of that stuff. So even along the way, like, it just changes. And I think you just have to keep moving and keep rolling with it. And that's the only way to figure out what you want your big picture to be, because you need experience and knowledge in yourself and who you are to figure out what you want your big picture to look like.
You had talked a bit about the situations that kind of come out of left field that solve the the problem du jour, so to speak. Do you have any examples that stand out in your mind of just you were looking for a solution in this direction and something completely out of the blue just materialized in your life? Are there any that stand out to you?
Sure. I think of, again, I was a lifelong bartender, right? I was a bartender for 20 years, and well into my sobriety, I was bartending because it was the only skill I had. I had never done anything else. I was unemployable. I had no education. I always say I'm much more feral than domesticated. So the thought of like going and getting a job and having a boss, it's like my soul literally will die if that happened to me. So I just kept bartending because it's the only thing I knew to do. And at one point, I had always bartended really like high volume, super busy nightclubs. That was always my thing. The majority of my life, I didn't go to work until 11 p.m. So I knew in my sobriety, obviously that was going to have to change, especially once I started going to school, keeping those hours. I mean, I get up now at the time I used to get home from work. I get up at like 5 a.m. I used to not be home until 5 or 5:30 in the morning, closing down the bar and cleaning and all that stuff. So my girlfriend calls me, and everybody always wants to set me up, because I'm forever single. Everybody wants to set me up with their friend. Everybody thinks they have the perfect person for me. And my girlfriend calls me, and she's like, me and my husband have this friend, and we really want to introduce you to him. She said, we're just going to have dinner at my house. I'm going to cook dinner. We'll invite you. We'll invite him. Just see if you guys hit it off. And I said, yeah, sure, whatever. So I show up. This dude is not my type at all in any way, shape, or form. Super nice guy. Glad I met him. Now, fast forward 4 months, and it was that guy that called me with a job opportunity that completely changed my life in that moment, right? it was at a really nice upscale restaurant. So my last bartending gig was at Capitol Grill in Kansas City. I worked there for many years. And he's the person that ended up connecting me with that job. Now, I didn't realize in the moment what a game changer that was. But looking back on it, it's like that was the job that allowed me to get out of nightclubs and get back into regular life hours, right? I worked 2 shifts a week, 3 to 7 or 8 p.m., right? I had plenty of time to do homework. I made enough money there that I could support myself while going to school. And it completely changed my whole picture. And would I've ever thought meeting that guy that night at dinner, would I've ever thought that he was 4 months later going to call me with this opportunity? Of course not. I couldn't foresee that. But everything is just a stepping stone to the next thing. That's why you have to always keep moving and keep meeting people and, maybe take advantage of the opportunity that doesn't sound like something you'd be interested in, because it might be that thing that leads you to the person that leads you to the next thing.
I think those stories are so cool about these just believe it as serendipitous moments of how could this seemingly innocuous blah 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 just turn into something so incredible. And it's funny, as you were telling your story, like the quick spark notes version of the first employee that I had who was working with me part-time. One night we were going to a restaurant and they had an hour long wait. We were like, all right, whatever, let's just go to Dunkin' Donuts. Go to Dunkin' Donuts, see this guy. Oh, hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you. I'm Andrew. I do computer stuff. Hey, nice to meet you. Names hidden for confidentiality purposes. We'll just call him Greg. He says, hey, I'm Greg. I say, Greg, nice to meet you. You do computer stuff? Oh, yeah, I work at this giant company. Da 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 da. Whatever. Okay, talk to you later. And 6 months later, I was in that position where I was just like, I'm tired of the way things are. I need a way out, but I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. Like I've got some ideas of what maybe I should do, but nothing is really hitting me the way that I want it to. And 6 months later, I haven't spoken to him since that random nice to meet you shaking hands at Dunkin' Donuts. He basically says, hey, I've got an opportunity for you. This company went out of business. They got 60,000 clients, nobody to service them. I remember you said you do IT. Is this something you'd be interested in? And I like calculated the number in my mind of like what that list would be worth. And so I had come to the conclusion. I said, if he says any number less than $300,000, I'm going to make this work. And so I was about to pitch him, and I remember I was going to offer him 60,000 to start, just to test the waters. And I was like, you know what? I'll just ask what he's looking for just to feel him out. And I said, okay, so what are you looking for this? He says 600. I was like, that's like double what I was willing to spend. But this is a huge opportunity. And he was like, and if you could just do it cash, that would be cool too. I was like, oh, that's a $600.00.
Right. That's a
And
different
then
600.
it's a different 600. And I almost said no because I was like, this is too good to be true. What's the catch? And I ended up taking the leap, and it completely transformed the business for the next 5 years. So I love those stories of out in left field. And I kind of had the feeling it's just like when you surrender to the universe, things just fall into place. The person that you met 4 months ago that you had no interest in dating gives you the opportunity to break free from the chains. I just love those stories so much. And so is that something that you practice, just staying open to the universe at all times? Or is this kind of in emergency break glass and let the universe take care of it?
No, I am at all times. I trust my intuition and my instinct, and I know the universe is always guiding me. And it's really helpful too, in that even when quote unquote negative things happen, like when I don't get something I want, it's sort of the same story. I don't get too hung up on that stuff now, because if it didn't work out, it wasn't supposed to. That wasn't my next right move. So I'm perfectly fine with that. And usually when something doesn't work out, it's because something better is coming. So it's almost exciting to me now when I don't get, whatever the picture is I have in my head, if it doesn't go that way, it's almost exciting because I'm like, oh, damn, what's the universe got for me? Like, this is going to be good. But yeah, it is. I feel like I am always divinely guided, and I just stay open. I do not ignore anything, regardless of how random it seems. Again, like a random phone call or text message out of the blue, I will always pay attention to those things. If somebody reaches out to me and asks me to do a speaking engagement that isn't typically something I would do, or not my standard skill set or topics or whatever, I will pay attention to that stuff because the universe put that on my plate for a reason. There's something there. And I usually need to challenge myself a little bit to get out of my comfort zone. So I'll take advantage of those opportunities. But yeah, I just try to always be open and aware of what crosses my path because I don't believe there are any accidents.
Do you have any examples that come to mind of seemingly at the moment failures that turned into grand slams down the road?
Yeah, my whole 20s.
Amen.
There's a couple. I would say one big one that's just a regular life thing. Many years ago, I wanted to buy this condo, and a friend of mine was the developer. He was the construction dude, and he built beautiful condos, and he was putting this building together, and I was like, I definitely want in on this. It's a great price if I get in early. And he was a drinking and partying person, right? Um, and I kept trying to get him to do this deal with me while the condos were being built. They were selling them, right? And I kept trying to get him to do this deal with me. Like, I really wanted one of these condos. And he kept blowing me off, right? He's just, because he was in his own world. He parties, he's drunk all the time, and not good at following through on things. And I started to get mad, right? So I go around him, and the realtor for the building was also a friend of ours. And it's like, I'm just going to call her directly. I'll just do it with her. I don't need him. So I call her, and I get the same thing. Like, I'm just getting this runaround, and I start getting really mad because, of course, I'm a little bit of a bully. When I get my head set on something, I am going to do everything in my power to make that happen. Well, I couldn't make it happen. And what did happen is I realized I was being a bit of a bully. And I recognize when I'm in that mindset, when I'm having to try so hard for something and it's just not working out despite my best efforts, it's typically not the right thing. So I just had that moment of clarity, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to sit back. Like, I shouldn't have to force it. This is way too hard. And literally 6 months later, here we are. I don't know exactly what happened, but the whole building got foreclosed on. My friend who was the developer lost the whole thing. It ended up being bought by another company, and everybody who had put down payments on those condos lost them. And I think they had to go through a big lawsuit over the whole thing. So here I am going, oh my gosh, that was the universe protecting me, right? When I didn't know to protect myself, because I was doing everything in my power to get one of those condos. The other example I think of course, is my car accident, which ultimately got me sober. Like, standing on the side of the freeway in those moments right after, and in the moments right after my car accident, I thought I had killed someone. I thought the other car that I hit, I thought I killed that guy. And obviously, not a great moment, something that you would like to label as terrible and a horrible event, but it was truly one of the greatest things that ever happened to me, because it's what made me obviously pull my head out of my ass and get my life together. I can't label that as bad.
That's one of my go-tos as well. And we're in the January DUI club. Hey, but that's one of the moments that I look back at my life, and I've kind of adopted this philosophy of trying to take labels off things as good or bad and just kind of graying it out to where does this fall on my spectrum of preferences. And it's funny though, because like the previous two girls that I dated before I met my wife had cheated on me, and that was not my preference. At the same time, I needed that push to get out of those relationships to discover ultimately like the mother of my child. And had those things not happened that weren't my preference at the time, like I wouldn't recommend going through that and feeling that, but I needed that to happen. My DUI on the side of the road, throwing up all over myself, that forced me to get a breathalyzer in my car, fail that breathalyzer, go to court, get sent to rehab, discover 12-step recovery. It's the best things in my life. And I was in that restaurant trap as well. But when I moved to Florida, I had tried finagling my way back into Carrabba's. I had done that for like 6 or 7 years and worked my way up and burned those bridges. But I thought maybe now in Florida, I can, lie to the proprietor and get my friend to pretend that he's actually in charge and he'll give me a reference. And then I can weasel my way back into Carrabba's. And then I I forget what happened with it. I have a feeling because I wasn't that in tune with the universe that I tried and it didn't work out. But very shortly after, somebody introduces me to a company that is in the IT field, which I'd been trying to break into forever and had no success. And then in the interview, they're like, "Oh, we need people in the IT department. Like, you're hired." And it was 20% higher than what I was hoping to make. And it was like, "Oh, that's that whole let go, let God, let the universe guide my path." And isn't it so much easier when the universe just presents things than when you just try to force your way into a condo that's going to get foreclosed on?
So much easier. It's such an easier existence. And I think that's one of the big things for me too in my journey is, a big motivator for me is really intrinsically I'm lazy. I don't have the energy for a big, chaotic, dramatic life. You know what I mean? Like, I need things to be easy. And when you sit back, and that's funny, you're talking about that, having your friend give your reference. And I was just thinking, like a good alcoholic, right? Like, of course, always manipulating, trying to move all the pieces to get the outcome that we want. It's so funny. We do that with everything. But, you know, I heard a speaker is exactly what you're talking about. I heard a speaker some years ago, and he said, I don't label things as good or bad, they're just necessary. And I loved that. That's so good because it is necessary. Even the things that don't feel good in the moment, growth doesn't typically feel good. You don't get to grow when things are easy. Like, you have to go through hard times. You have to troubleshoot your problems and figure out solutions, and you have to have the commitment to do that and take the steps to get out of problems and troubles and be committed to it. That's how you grow. That's how you become a better person. It's not sitting back and having things just be easy and feel great all the time.
I think that is just such a it's like so obvious too, but it's so powerful. And I love that they intrinsically were lazy, but we like just call it the universe. It's like, "Oh, I don't feel like doing that." It's like, must be the universe. But
Well,
sometimes
for
though
me
it's
it's like
true.
it's life choices though. It's like, thank God I stopped lying, right? When I got into sobriety and I learned that you can't be a liar and maintain good, healthy recovery, because lying is exhausting. All the drama that creates is exhausting. Having to keep track of it is exhausting. Like, even what you were talking about, trying to manipulate the situation and give the phone number of the friends and getting them to answer the phone at the right time and say the right thing, like, that's exhausting. I don't have the energy for all of that stuff. Like, I need to just have a nice transparent life so that I can just relax because ultimately I just want to relax.
Well, that comes back to where we started with. If we're going to tie this bow, everybody just wants to be happy. And when you let the universe guide your life and it's in accordance with the principles that you want to be practicing in your life, things just get easy. Things just slow down. And then, like, the flip side of it is things get easier and they get better, and you get happier. Stress goes down, happiness goes up. That's the key to life. And you've uncovered it here on the Self-Made and Sober podcast. We're running short on time, but Angela, where can people find you and learn more about the things that you're doing?
Sure. You can find the best place to find me probably is Instagram at Addiction Unlimited. I have a major love affair with Instagram. And probably on www.myrecoverytoolbox.com is the best place to interact and find good resources for sobriety and recovery.
Awesome. Well, Angela, it was so great having you on the show, and maybe we'll figure out a way where our episodes line up, because I was recently on her podcast. It's absolutely amazing. But Angela, thanks so much for being on the show. Guys, if you enjoyed it, please subscribe and rate the show on iTunes. Message me on Facebook or on Instagram at Self-Made Sober. And Angela, have a great day. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you so much for listening to Self-Made and Sober. Be sure to join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/SMC Mastermind, like Self-Made Coaching Mastermind. I hope you enjoyed the show, and be sure to subscribe and rate the show so you can get notified each Friday when we put out a new episode.